Is rá Alaíonna é drowned Galway a hawlíonn gaiileh I dtogchaí a bhétaí a thorlú go luath. An rud atá aisteach aniu b'fhéidir gur bé an gná síl a bheith an amórach, le tuilte agus leibhéil na farraige ag ordú agus ag athrú na carrach. Léiríonn slíthar Photomontages, deara textíle, dealmhóireacht, ceol agus taibhniú, síl agus caithear na gaiileh faoi hin. Cé go gáardúin a chaithfidh an buíola hecht go dtí go rachamuid I mbun gníomhaíochta. Tá muid chun sibh a thuairt thuras iarúil Photomontages le Joe Lee ina bheictear muinte na gaiileh I nearraí le ealaíontóirí a hawlíonn an chaoi a mharachmuid I nabhainn difriúil báite. An féidir leat sa siúil bhór uisce? Tá muid I breanú inis an Photomontage cótaí dearga atá alla an Galway Atlantic ag breanú amach an Atlantach. Feictar cótaí dearga an sean stíl éadach an iarthar, in ealaíonn agus íomhána an iarthar ó níú ísté go raig. Tá na mná chusa crise nós éon aisteacha mar rinne John Millington Singh tagarttíomh trá.
There's some reason why they're there looking out to sea, possibly some sort of danger. They're on the coastline. It's a play with these older images of a traditional Irish dress that would have been very much associated with this part of the city as well. I think what's sort of different about it is that I decided to populate the bottom part of the image with plastic waste. I could almost imagine these cótaí dearga, because they're unusual cótaí dearga, they're on stilts, and I could almost imagine them trying to pick their way through this debris and kind of stand in the way they are there looking out to sea. There's an ominous sort of stormy sky, and traditionally women would maybe be looking out to see how fishermen were they going to return safely to home, and this time in a sense they're kind of looking out to see what's going to happen to the climate.
Tá muid ag Goldfish Girl atá crochta in aice leis an córchlós atá le feiceáil san íomhá. Spreag an láthair seo an tógra I leog. Bíonn an córchlós faoi uisce níos minicí na leitheanta seo tuisciúil na farraigí ag ordú. Tá an cailín beag a caitheamh clogad le Deirdre Kennedy mar chosaint ón bháisteach.
So in a way there's almost a sort of an indication of climate change going on there already. And even to the extent that anybody who visits the car park, there's actually a sign with a car immersed in water and warning people to be careful not to leave their cars there. So in a sense, that was really the starting point with this. But in my mind, then I kind of thought about the aquarium being flooded and all the fish escaping. And even though there's probably no goldfish in an aquarium, I kind of thought that she was out there, and this wasn't that unusual an event that was taking place. She, just in front of her, one of these escaped fishes just jumped out of the water, and she was sort of just in a sort of sense of wonder at that. But like the clouds there are sort of ominous. There's a mother and another child sort of trying to make their way through this sort of mayhem. Again, in this work, there was a strain of fairy tales, that these things were a little bit like fairy tales, not really with a sense of knowing what the actual narrative of that particular fairy tale is. But I think that points to another thing about these photomontages, and a thing that I think is a key element is an element of time. And they are very much like something has happened before the scene that's presented to you. There's the scene that is being presented to you, and there's something that may happen in the future.
Tá muid sa chathair bheaníiseach áit an bhfuil an am I láthair agus an am le teacht le feiceáil, lána na céimhe mar atá agus mar a bheith faoi uisce, béal na cuirbe mar atá agus mar a bheith faoi a bheith. Tá na hiamhána crochta sa chórchlós áit na bhfuil an chathair ag cúlú ó na tuilte de bhór aspa gníomhaíochta san na héráide.
I immediately wanted to start photographing The Long Walk, because it appeared in so many postcards. I just wondered and tried to imagine what it would be like if this place had become completely inundated. And when you look at this also, you kind of feel, what is going to happen when this wave actually breaks? In a sense, you're trying to make these worlds that are very real to me when I'm making them, but they're not real. Like, if you just look at them, as you say, they definitely aren't real. For me, it's about, I really believe when I'm in the making of these things that I'm in that world, in a sense. I almost feel emotionally that I'm in it. But I think, one of the things that is often a feature in photomontages is that idea of scale, and scale being not right. That somebody's too big for their boots, that something is too small. And there is an element of that being kind of comedic in a way, a little bit like performance, that it can function as something that's over the top.
This image built up around a character, Boy Lady, created and designed by Arran Murphy. Arran describes her as, in a city immersed in water, she is a protector of safe passage for those who can't afford to float, who must traverse the uncertain and ever-changing terrain that lies beneath unpredictable waters. Her costume is her identity, her second skin. It is made from waste plastic and rubber, rubbish transformed through relationship. Chlach muintir na Gaillimhe póirt na Grianghraifne a ghlacamar son na Photomontage. Sa chás seo ba snámhathe agus taimhheoirí a ghlacpóirt. Tá rud a cinnt níos próiní faoi na hiamhána seo nuair a aithnítear ar córsan ionta.
I felt that this image had a real sense of performance in it. There is a sense of sort of carnival about it. And of course it refers back to, that Galway has such a rich tradition of street theatre. And it is in a way referencing that.
What would you wear to survive in a flooded Galway was the starting point for the textile art commissions, and we see Emily Bhroin's design response in these next images. Thinking of mushrooms and fungi that flourish in damp conditions, she used, as she describes, images of crinoline stinkhorn mushroom with its indusium or lacy skirt descending from below the cap, with an inflatable life ring that could perhaps symbolise the mushroom's nature aiding humans in a drowned Galway. We developed scenarios for this character with performer Róisín Tyrell. There is a clash between the beauty of the design and performer and the environment she finds herself in. We will still want beauty and joy even as the world dissolves around us.
Róisín really animated these costumes in a way that was unexpected, but it was fantastic, and it again brought this other kind of dimension to this. It is the Bish school, secondary school, but I had this as a sort of blue colour, and I was sort of saying, no, like, if we're kind of looking at this issue of climate change and temperatures going up, what would it be like if we were like Australia or California or something like that? So anyway, I dug around and found a few images of skies and that, and it came to mind then that my daughter, who lives in Sydney, was there last year during their burn season. She sent a few photographs from Sydney. She just lives just outside Sydney, a place called Coogee Bay, and from the balcony of her apartment she could see a sky that wasn't dissimilar from the sky that was in this. And I realised then that this year, during that season that takes place in California, a very similar scene would happen. And in a way, it had become the new normal. That we weren't. It was surprising, and people commented on it. But now it's the second or the third year where this has become sort of a regular appearance. That the atmosphere is becoming toxic, particularly at certain times of the year. So that's what this image was trying to encapsulate. And I just imagined then that if the sky was that hot, the water was going to get hot, and it was going to be really hard for the goldfish to stay in it. And the goldfish is jumping out of the water because it's too hot, and that's why we call it hot water. Róisín, she really entered into the whole idea of the thing. And when she was in a car park, looking over sitting on a car, looking at the Tar Macadam, you could really believe that she was looking into water. And for me, it was like, what was in the water? And I just had this idea of some sort of weird fish. Again, that idea of fish escaping from the aquarium was kind of the starting point with it. But this was like, she was the princess and this was the ugly prince or something like that. And I just thought that this little drama playing out in this environment captured that idea of the new normal, as you can see, that this will become so normal that this type of thing could actually be happening, where there's a woman struggling to walk through the car park in the background, but for Róisín, she's looking down wondering about this. Is this her prince?
Is sais simbol na Gaillimhe é an túr tumtha ag bóthar na trá. Dainneocht tú ar a buinte é agus measam gúil cuimhne fearsanta i gachaile duine an Gaillimhe. Mar sin bhí sé ríthbhábhachtach go gcuireadh muid an radharc sin faoi uisce agus go gailfí é. Tá Brendan Speedy Smith, duine atá ag gníomhú ar san na timpachta in seo leis na blianta fada, ag caithfh clogad Deirdre Kennedy agus é breanúmach ar radharc ina bhfuil na nithe atá ar asnamh níos suntasaí ná siús atá le feiceáil.
This image was always going to be taken from behind, of him looking out to sea, not unlike the Cótaí Dearga. He's watching the sky and he's watching the sea. The whole colouring, I really wanted it to be that bluey, grey, inky sort of sky, you know, and there's something coming across the Atlantic and it's not going to be very nice. And again, it had that feel of narrative that there was something going to happen. And often what I'm doing is I'm kind of creating something not unlike a theatre set. There is a play that's going to happen, but you design like a maquette or a model for where that is going to happen. And that is an interpretation, part of the interpretive process of staging a theatre piece. So there's an element of that in these, that there is a sense of staging some type of scenario.
The Icelandic writer André Sayre Magnusson says, "We need to start connecting with the future in an urgent and intimate way in order to safeguard it past our own lifetimes. We need to imagine the unimaginable in order for it not to happen."
When we were there was this boating class or something going on, and I started to imagine, could they be part of what was happening with climate change? The idea of icebergs in the North Atlantic just really caught my fancy, and I just sort of thought, oh, what would it be like if an iceberg floated up the Corrib, and what would that look like? And then I found an image of an iceberg. It was like the boat and the people in the boat just seemed to gain in significance for some reason. Maybe they're refugees, maybe they're climate change refugees of some sort. So, you know, like, I wasn't trying to make it absolutely believable, but I wanted the elements of believability to be there. It's not real, but the elements of reality are sort of floating around in it. And I think that's a little bit like what happens in a dream or in your subconscious, that there's elements that you really recognise, but everything is not where it should be, really.
Tá muid a críochfort ar doras fíorúil. Nuair bhí mar deanna taide ar thabhchaí báite na Gaillimhe, phreanaí mar ar characha timpeall na Cruinne atá maol tuilte i láthair na Huaire. Tháinig ar an íomhá seo le Néill Sellas a léiríonn ahar agus mac ag cárta brúscar pláisteach is slumí vanille, agus d'aistrigh Joe go dtí an fórsa chuoch é.
Immediately, again, when I saw Spanish Arch, and it's such an iconic location in Galway, that it immediately appeared to me as a plug hole in a sink. It's one of the things that really has struck me is the amount of habitat destruction that is going on in the world, and These images from a photographer, Néill from Manila, you know, they're almost apocalyptic, the idea that people have to live beside this amount of plastic and pollution in the water. And I just felt that that had become such a big issue. The idea of our waste in the West is being exported to all of these countries, but in general the oceans are being completely polluted, and you know, wildlife can't really exist as we've known it in the past in that as an environment. And this is just a really extreme juxtaposition of two things. Again, instantly sort of said to me, look, there's danger here. There's real danger, and it's a social justice issue as well, insofar as that in the Western world we want all this plastic because we want to have our food all dressed up nicely, but we don't want to have to deal with the offshoot of those things.